My name is Paul Randolph. Born with Paul Randolph III. 37, originally from Atlantic City, New Jersey. Um, Currently live in suburb of Atlanta, so in east Atlanta, Lawrenceville, Georgia. But currently here today because came up here to experience to learn more about family side of history that just related to some of the slaves that were interned here, as well as you know, learn more about family, meet up with family and learn more about things around the area. I have to count how many greats back because it's a while. So, but this would be on my great grandmother's end, toward one of her descendants, Rachel Lee Whitlock, and further back end were here. So, like I said, cousin's better with that as far as like the minutia details, but yeah, that's how it definitely connection would be here. As far as Stratford Hall itself in memory, I would say about 3 or 4 years ago for a Stratford Hall that I recall. But as far as the details of being related to Lee's side of the family, it would be since I would say 1997 or 98. It was kind of doing a little bit of a genealogy tour and going back and looking through. And one thing that a lot of our side of the family kind of really was good at was keeping tracking details of relatives and who's who and who's all related to who within an area. So it was kind of, we always knew, it was just didn't get the more concrete details so more recently. Our family typically has a annual get together. We all meet around the Thanksgiving weekend. So one of the biggest things that I would say our family's been very, very, very good at has been history. History of the land, all of us meeting up, the lands that we grew up on, the lands that they grew up on, the surrounding area. I mean, you have cousins, great aunts and uncles who can tell details from decades ago. So growing up, you would hear tales of, oh yeah, your great aunt so and so, he used to be over here, and they'll pull the pictures, and you're seeing all these photos of relatives. And over the years, it's like, well, this is a random person on the wall. We started digging more into it, and it's like, oh well, this person's on the Lee's side of the family. This person's, then you start trying to do the dots and the connections. So how it ties and how we found out about Stratford was like, instead of it just being this informal oral history being passed down, it was more of kind of dividing it up and like, hey, look, let's find out a little more about this. We know there are other family members out there. We know that our history is a little bit further than this stretch of land in middle of Virginia. So start digging deep, and once you start overturning a couple more stones, you start finding more and more. The more you dig, the more you find. And then we ended up finding out about here. And I think our one of our cousins, who you guys interviewed earlier, actually reached out and got more information and took it upon himself to go get more information. It's been feeding it to us ever since, every year. So get a random email, not save them all, just looked at hey, this is your history, this how you're related to these people. And it's been fascinating to me. It's actually opened up a few interesting moments with stuff, but yeah, that's kind of how it kind of migrated to here. Living in Georgia, you're used to people bringing up the history of Lee and Confederacy and stuff like that. So it's not unheard of. You're going to find somebody who's a relative. So come to find out that the first such incident was about kind of like when I started really learning more about this, I would say around 1997, 98. So in probably about the 6th or 7th grade, and met a person in class. Classmate of mine, friends chopping up talking. And in the meeting another friend of hers, last name happened to be Lee. So, we get to talking and everything about that, and I don't know how we got into the subject of just genealogy, just, spitballing around class and everything. And she's like, yeah, I was telling her how, like, with the transplant moving down south, and I was trying to explain to them that, whereas from Jersey, but I usually always see my family every year in Virginia, so it was like second home. And it's like, yeah, my friend was like, yeah, my related to Robert E. Lee. I'm like, yeah, funny story. So after we heard about it, it's like, yeah, so funny story. There's a pretty good chance we might be distantly related. So it's almost become a running gag with us every time I see her. I'm like, her name is Megan. Every time I see her, Megan, I'm like, hey, cuz, how you doing? So it's been this hilarious running gag for about the better part of 20 years. The second such incident was friend I met in college. Again, last name Lee. Just like, oh, this can't happen twice in somebody's life. This is just random. So, again, just randomly talking, and end up being a roommate staying with us. Actually, right now she's currently keeping an eye for my dogs. But her daughter was doing a genealogy report for school, pulling a family tree, and lo and behold, her father's side of the family is related to Robert E. Lee. I'm not sure. I don't recall if it's directly or if it's one of his brothers or something like that. But again, that came up. So actually on the way up here, I was like, so yeah, if I find anything out, if I see any pictures, anybody looks close enough to him, send his photos to you. And again, now I'm like, hey, cuz, how are you doing? So it's again, diving into this, you find stuff out. That is just, it becomes not only interesting in itself to learn about, who you are, where you come from, but also turns into a pretty interesting conversation set piece where it depends on where it goes. We have almost a responsibility, I would say, to learn about that which has been tried to be erased from us. That is, I can look at some of our friends, they can trace their family back to whatever clan in Europe, or my wife's Chinese, you can trace her family back to areas of Hong Kong or whatever. But it's, for my family outside of with the immediate, there's a stopping point. There's a line that has historically, systematically been attempted to be erased. And it's important to see that to find as much as you can to see that you're more than just a descendant of a person that was on the shipping label that came in on the random port. And in some parts of the family, that port may be Savannah or some part in Louisiana, but it's important to know that that person that you descended from, that survived through all these trials and tribulations and everything that could have stopped me from existing, has to be more than just a shipping number. And the fact is, you have to learn to care about that, because that ties you to whoever you're related to, even if it's jokingly somebody you meet in your 6th grade class or what have you, that's still somebody you're related to, and there's a story there. And and going back to the whole phrase of who are you who do not know your history, if you don't know who your families are, I mean, can you really have a better idea of who you are? Because it's lost. So it's good to pass it down, and pass down that importance. I would say one of the biggest things that's been instilled in us growing up is we keep the family together. We keep the family tight. And I feel like learning your history plays into that. That kind of goes hand in hand with more than just seeing each other, keeping to know each other. You kind of have to know where you're coming from, so you know where you're going. You're almost celebrating going back to a place that wasn't a happy moment for a lot of people. So it's the initial thought of, you're going here to learn about a painful chapter in your family's history. And you have, and the realization that by sheer blind luck, in most cases, you're here on the backs of people who didn't make it. To honor the fact that, you know, although that had a painful history, the fact that we can move past that and they're aiding, help us know who we are. It's a bit of a resolution, but it's a welcome one. So, I mean, that first hesitation was like, I don't know, kind of coming out and woods, middle cornfield, not little hesitant, you know, cracking nervous jokes, but now, but being here, it's been learning so much more in depth. It's filling in the blank pages that you kind of knew was there in a nebulous sense, but it was like, it's a page you didn't want to read. Now it's kind of like, hey, now you're filling in learning stuff. It's you're learning more about history. It's more than just you were here. Now it's more like, you know, here's how your day-to-day, here's how the day-to-day would have been, here's how you survived. And it's amazing to see the preservation of everything passed on. And you know, got lucky enough to see the library, and that place has been, I could spend several days there easily, like looking through all that. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be like a repeated stop next time I come back. But the getting to see history as it is, and reading it in the language as it was written, it makes it feel it solidifies and makes it feel way more real. It's not just a page, something you have to study for a quiz. It's like, no, this is literally a document here. This is the terms of surrender. This is how things were, and it's fascinating. I mean, definitely going to go back and research more of this. So, and it's one of the cool things is learning that, especially with some of the history connected to like the foundation of this country, and to begin with, like, you know, several presidents and signers of the Declaration of Independence. And then it's one of the neater things I saw and learned was that recognizing some of the names of some of the documents or there are places where I've lived, or where my wife lived, or where we currently live, that like were named after these people. Like, for example, Button Gwinnett being a signer of the Declaration, the county that the city I live in is named after him, in Gwinnett County. But and then having the added bonus of seeing family members being tied into that, it's a cool feeling that, you know, you're part of history. You're part of a recognizable part of history. Seeing how things were explained, or how certain mannerism, like how, you know, some of the field hands worked and things like that. Or actually have a pretty good example. So let's say, for example, tool making, right? You know, working in the lathe or things like that. For example, growing up, so being in that area of Virginia, I always knew my great grandfather was. What's the saying? Necessity is the mother of all invention. So you don't have much, you know, you kind of invent your way around things and make things work. And a lot of my family have been gifted in crafting things, and just random moments of, hey, we're just gonna make this work. Let's see how put this together. And seeing that being done with like tools working, I'm like, I see where he got this idea, and I can see how he could have connected the dots from just simple, I need to make a table. Well, I don't have a way to make stands for it. Well, here's a tool that we used before. Okay, well, that's going to take too long. Here's how we can modernize it. Like, you see the thought process now where you would get to that. But it's like watching, it's like going back and reading, not so much reading, but like you take a document and you're going from like A to C, but you're missing the B part, and seeing this is like filled in. Oh, like I'm seeing where this could have morphed from. And it's funny of like how not far off it is. And I can only imagine again that that goes back to history being passed down from descendants going play, leaving here and going places, then us telling others and going that way, and just it morphs into something physical we can see. So it's cool seeing that thought process of how field hands worked, or how certain recipes were handed down, how like some stuff hasn't entirely changed too often.